911, what's the address to your emergency?
Yes, I'm right here behind Chuck E. Cheese. Somebody get stabbed! Get stabbed!
What's happening?
Right here behind Chuck E. Cheese. They just shot us. They just shot us.
Has anybody been hit?
Yeah, she did. She did right now. Please come get us.
Okay, where exactly are you at?
Right here behind Chuck E. Cheese. Right here.
You're behind Chuck E. Cheese?
Yes, right here. I'm holding pressure on the wound.
All right, I'm going to transfer the ambulance service, okay? Stay on the line with me.
Baby, stay with me.
When the call came out, but there was shots fired. Obviously, you're heightened. You're definitely concerned. The 911 callers were pretty distraught. Typically, that means that, you know, this isn't like a prank call, or this isn't somebody mishearing something. Didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. So as I need the area, I turn my body cam on.
See if I can hear out there.
Right.
The driver of that vehicle, he was sitting at the side with the female who was unresponsive.
Okay, back up for me.
I can't. I don't want to take one off the pressure room right here.
Okay, you got a hold on it?
Yeah.
We need medics to get in here quickly. She's hitting the torso.
I mean, you could see she was bleeding. She did not appear any older than early 20s. Anytime you respond to a call like that and somebody's been shot, it's sad. So you let your training take over, do what we need to do.
Where'd this happen at, man?
Right here, they both had. Like,
Who's they?
oh, some guys.
10-4.
Black truck. Kind of truck. Yeah, Chevy.
Old
I
dude?
don't have a. I have a
Truck is an SUV or truck is a truck? I got it.
The driver was a first-hand witness of what had happened, so we needed to try to get information from him all at the same time. We're doing what we can with our CPR and holding direct pressure to make sure she is taken care of as best as possible until the ambulance arrives.
Stay right here. Okay, listen. We're gonna pull her out of there, okay? We're gonna start doing CPR. We're gonna try helping her out. Is there anything else you can tell me about these guys in the truck?
Whoever the guy is, she can go through her phone to fucking out.
Okay, what was the deal? What was going on? Hey, can you do me a favor? Can you stand up? We're gonna come over here a little out of the way, okay? Because they're gonna need to get the medics in here to help her. Hey, if you want to help her, you gotta get up and come with me, okay?
The driver was upset, understandably so. Obviously, he wanted to get her help. And so we were getting on the radio telling the fire and ambulance to expedite. We're trying to get her help as soon as we possibly can. The ambulance arrived. They loaded her on the ambulance, and her care was then turned over to them, and she wasn't doing very well.
Come on, come on.
The gentleman she was with, we needed to get information from him to figure out who had done this, so we knew who to look for or where they had went.
Okay. Let me hold on to this for you, okay? Can you put that in the seat? What's your name, sir?
My name Terrence.
Terrence. Okay.
Is she gonna be okay?
Well, they're working on her. I'm not a doctor, man. I can't speak for her, okay? But she's got the medics here with her now. They're gonna get her to the hospital.
One of them. That's my best friend.
Okay, I understand that. Terrence, what happened tonight?
Some guys she was supposed to meet up about some weed.
Okay.
She's supposed to serve them.
She was supposed to serve?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know where her phone's at?
She has it. It's in the car.
Hey, he said her phone's sitting in the car. She was supposed to be serving up some weed. This is a robbery. Okay.
The ambulance got her to the hospital as soon as they could. And then Terrence told officers that they were there to meet up with somebody to basically sell drugs, marijuana.
Okay. So, how many people were shooting?
I seen two guys in the car.
Two guys in the car?
Yeah.
One shooter or two?
I want the driver.
Okay. Some of the people that were calling said they heard a couple of different volleys of shots. How many shots did you hear?
I heard it was at least like, I want to say like 10.
All at once?
Like, it was like, no.
Okay,
it
so
was
there was
a
some...
handgun. It sounded like a 9mm.
Sound like a 9mm, okay. What else can you tell me about these guys? What they look like?
One, like I really couldn't like really get a chance to see him, like really, cause like we was coming from our famous they ski, like I skied off on them, and when we was coming this way, they rolled right past me, so I stopped. I was gonna back up, and as I'm backing up, they came back this way and they started shooting at us because I was trying to get down and go.
Terrence gave us information as to what the suspect vehicle was driving. We were looking for a mid-sized, dark-colored or black Chevy SUV.
Okay, so they went past you this way?
Yeah.
Turn around and come back and shot at you.
We need to get an identity of the victim. So with Terrence being the point of contact, I was informed that it was Destiny or Clark. She was 19 years of age.
Destiny was very outgoing, brave, smart, intelligent. Never was scared to let you know anything that was on her mind. That night, that Friday night, I got a phone call, and it was from one of her friends. It was from Izzy. And she was telling us that she had got a phone call from Destiny and some gunshots was out in the background. So I'm like, what?
I woke up to her calling me to let me know that she had just been robbed. And then she was like, well, matter of fact, here they go right here. And I'm like, what? And then I hear gunshots on the phone and the phone dropped. And I just kept calling her name like, as you answer me. And then the phone turned off and I just kept calling her back like, what happened?
You're gonna have to tape off over some brain flooded set of tire tracks that run right up over the curb right over there. There are gunshots up there too.
Sounds like everything happened here.
I don't think it was. I think the initial confrontation happened there.
The drug rip, yeah.
While on scene, detectives started arriving.
Upon my arrival, the car was sitting basically in the middle of 36th Street. One of the doors, if not both of the doors, were open at the time, and there were bullet holes throughout the car. We're a small town with bigger city problems. In this case, it was surprising to me the amount of gunshots. Destiny's phone was located in the vehicle. So we were able to get that phone, get it to the forensic unit, and start getting the information that we needed. That takes time. Every time we walk onto a scene, it's quite a mystery. So we take photos throughout the scene. We collected all the casings and we processed that vehicle. There were obviously bullet holes throughout the car. There was a shattered window.
You're trying to figure out why somebody would do this, and especially in this incident where it was, a female victim, and trying to figure out the who, what, where, when, and why. So a lot of that's interviewing people, canvassing, trying to get surveillance video.
You got somebody coming in from Lamar for Old Town Mall here. Do all the cameras. There's nothing for famous Dave said.
So another key aspect investigation would be checking for exterior cameras. So we came across a residence that had cameras. The residents let us into the residence to check them.
We had a shooting tonight, and we believe the suspect vehicle went down the street. And we're trying to get a good picture of the suspect vehicle so that we can solve this. About, is your clock correct?
Yes.
About cameras.
Yes.
At about 12:32.
Some of his cameras did have video. Then he leads us back to the room. And we're just hoping that this video helps us lead us to identify Who's responsible for this?
Sir, if you wouldn't mind, if it doesn't screw anything up, can I see the video?
You start thinking, who's going to be on this video? What's it going to reveal?
Can I see the video quick?
Oh, sure, yeah.
So we expanded the canvas further than just the immediate vicinity and came across a residence that had cameras. They let us into the residence to check them, letting us hopefully identify who's responsible for this.
This car cops, and you'll hear shots.
Except for this car drives by. A lot of shots. I got like 16.
18,
Yeah, 16 or 17.
About 18. This one 20.
Yeah, that's pretty close to 20.
So in reviewing the video, several cameras revealed the sound of one gunshot followed by several other gunshots in rapid succession. And the video was time-stamped at about approximately 12:31 a.m. right before we get the 911 call.
We wouldn't be able to, but man, that almost reminded me of G.
I know down to
They were smaller.
I know down to the police station they got a big screen, so they might be able to.
Yeah, but we can't zoom in and get it on plate. That's. I know it looks really good on TV, but I wish we had that capability. Can you try to stop it right as it gets in front of your, or like slow mo or anything? Yeah, it just looks like it's just a smaller SUV.
We unfortunately weren't able to determine the specific make and model of the vehicle.
Anytime a homicide is on camera, to locate that is such an exciting moment. But in video canvases, you're doing a needle in a haystack. In this circumstance, it shows a black SUV. Now we at least had an idea of what we were looking for.
No, she's dead. The victim's dead. They called it.
Once we see this vehicle on the video and we're back on scene, we were informed that Destiny succumbed to her injuries and it was a homicide.
My phone rang and it was detective. They asked me, did I have a daughter named Destiny? And I said yes. And then that's when he asked me, can I meet him up at the hospital? I was praying, we were all praying.
We're just gonna, I don't know if the might explain to you, but you have to keep you out here just because there's forensic evidence part of we're okay. So I'll have a local sheriff point around.
You put yourself in the shoes of family, right? And you want some closure for them. Nobody deserves this.
So they had us in this room for a while, and that's when we were told that she didn't make it. That's when we found out, after sitting in the cold room in the hospital. I felt like my whole world left. It was a part of me that left. She get shot at.
Yeah, well, she got shot at. We're not putting any of that information on. So I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah. We'll definitely tell you what we can. It's very screwy right now. Yeah.
I just felt empty. And I felt like I failed. Because I let her walk out that door that night. And then her birthday was 2 days later. That was the killing part about it.
I had called her mom and asked her what happened, and she's like, my baby's gone. She just said, my baby gone, and was crying, and I think I just stopped listening. I went home and just cried, honestly. I didn't really call nobody or talk to nobody for a really long time.
I was just mad at the whole world. I didn't know who to trust at that time, who did it, like, what was going on.
Guys, 0-3, we got one detained. Can we get a squad up to Bridge and Grand, just in front of the ER parking lot?
During this time, Destiny's ex-boyfriend, Cameron, was stopped by police officers in the vicinity of the emergency room.
Cameron's causing some type of disturbance. So at that point, officers apprehend him.
You know me, I wouldn't run from you for no reason, bro.
But you still ran from me.
I'm just trying to see my girl that just got shot, bro. You know I wouldn't give you no problems no other time. I'll stop whenever they want me anything. I don't give a
But you didn't stop this time.
Bro, I'm trying to see my girl right here.
Hey, are you okay?
Yeah, no, I'm just...
I didn't do nothing to you.
I lost my radio all gone.
That's fine.
My girl dead. Laying there dead.
That's fine.
Why can't I see? Oh my God, y'all want to do all this? Can you just take me to the hospital? I don't give a if I get arrested afterwards. Take me to the hospital. My girl's dying. No, my... Calm down.
Cameron was visibly upset and struggling with the situation. The emotions were what I call true emotions. But then again, we have to rule out and do our investigation properly. Cameron was to some extent involved with the victim, so that is another red flag. So we start putting the pieces together. He may be involved.
Calm down. Calm yourself. My girl dying, y'all don't understand. I don't care. Yeah. Left pocket, there's a pistol. Left pocket, there's a... Take the pistol. Take me to my girl. There's a pistol in his left pocket.
Got it.
Officers on scene end up locating a firearm on his person. He is her ex-boyfriend, and he shows up to the hospital with a gun. Cameron is a viable suspect. As a detective in this case, your immediate thought is, got him. One of my officers who was at the hospital encounters Cameron. Cameron identifies himself as Destiny Orr's ex-boyfriend, and he locates a handgun with Cameron.
I just want to see my girl. My girl dead, bruh. I'm not joking. I'm not playing. Look up Destiny Orr Clark. She in there laying right now. That's all I want to see. That's it.
Get a 32 in his pocket. Please mark it in the call.
In the right pocket. My girl dead. What do you want me to do? Not run around with a pistol and run from the police.
At that point, we're able to bring him down to the station.
At this point, we're working on Cameron. Where was he at? What was he doing? Who was he with? So Cameron mentioned that he was at a house party. He passes out, falls asleep on the couch, and wakes up to his phone blowing up, as he called it, and answers the phone and responds to the hospital where Destiny's family's at, and gets later arrested by Davenport police.
Cameron provided the information that he was at a friend's house, and that's where we would be able to put him on the night of homicide. That was followed up on.
The next morning, we locate and we speak with the owner of the residence. Okay, so on May 3rd, we're doing follow-up, basically kind of give you a little background. Is he's not in any trouble. We're doing follow-up reference to Destiny or Clark homicide. And
I heard about that.
her ex-boyfriend, Cam, said that he was around this area on that day.
Yeah, he was over here.
Oh, okay. How do you know him then?
They were over here drinking.
Okay.
On my floor.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had to clean it up.
It's probably a good thing that he made himself memorable and she was able to corroborate where he was at the time of the homicide.
We also get information reference his pistol that he had on him, that the caliber doesn't match. The gunshots on the vehicle.
It was not the same caliber as the casings that were on the scene. And then he was taken off the table as a potential suspect.
When we work in these cases, we're trying to get some closure for the family. That's the most important thing, is get these people into custody. So it does get frustrating, striking out. You just gotta keep working.
One of the most important pieces of evidence was the victim's phone. The phone was on the scene, located in the vehicle. The analysis of Destiny's phone came back and it showed some interesting interactions. We located a Facebook conversation that she had with Keith Smith. So Destiny was arranging to meet Keith Smith for a drug deal in the area of the homicide just prior to the homicide. Keith Smith's profile didn't have a lot of information, but it did have a photograph of two individuals standing next to each other. We put the photograph out to law enforcement, and one of the suspects has been involved with law enforcement before, and we were able to identify him as a person named Javante. That social media profile picture was shown to Terrence Murphy, the driver.
Okay, I understand that.
Terrence then points at Javante and advises that he believes that is Keith Smith and involved in the robbery.
That obviously piques our interest, and we try to focus on him and what he was doing, where he's at, and what exactly happened.
At that point, we believe we have a suspect. We needed to speak with Javante because he is definitely a person of interest in this homicide. So we formulate a plan to attempt to locate him. We set up surveillance on an address that we believe that he would be associated with and observe him going to a local store. At that point, we enter that store.
All right, you ready? Ready?
Yep. If Javante is the murderer and we as plainclothes detectives are going in to confront him, there's always a possibility of violence. So we have to go in with the mindset of this could be a dangerous situation.
Javante?
Oh,
Hi. Put your hands up. Put your hands out.
Whoa.
Police department.
Okay.
Come on, all right?
What's your name, bud? Okay, how are you?
All right.
All right.
What's going on?
Going out to station.
Okay.
You got one coming? Yeah.
What the hell? Did I do something wrong? Okay.
Inside the store, he surrenders without incident, and we take him down to the Davenport Police Station for an interview.
I'm Detective Walker, this is Detective Chief, or Ann.
Yeah. Okay. So this week, we have been investigating a shooting. Okay?
So I'm just trying to establish where you are in this whole grand scheme of things, right? Okay, and it's not looking good. Okay, so I'm reading your rights. After I read you your rights, and you place your initials on each one of these small lines, okay? As well. You have the right to remain silent.
Once Javante is with law enforcement, we allowed Javante to provide an initial statement without a lot of questioning to go along with that. Because once we get him locked in on a statement, we can then break down with evidence if he is not telling the truth.
I just want you to be upfront now.
She said it's not looking good.
No, it's not.
All right, well, let me tell you like this. I'm not gonna risk my life with them. And I don't do nothing. My name probably just come up because, okay, I live in this neighborhood. I have a background of stealing cars when I was young. That's why y'all probably picked me up. Y'all probably watch the house. If y'all watch the house, you'll see I don't even leave it. So I don't know how my name getting brought up in nothing or is hot or anything when I don't leave that house.
Javante originally denies being involved.
He was a little standoffish with us. We knew the likelihood of him being truthful was probably pretty slim.
Once I got out of prison, I did 8 years from 16 to 24.
Okay.
For a crime I didn't commit. So I know I'm smart, like, I'm not finna get back out here and end my life with nothing. I know ain't gonna do it for me. I don't care.
Okay.
I don't care about the next. I care about my family. And
Right. No, I understand that. I understand. You did 8 years for what?
Armed robbery. Something I didn't do.
Okay. Where were you Thursday night, Friday morning? Americana? Where at in Americana?
I don't know the address, but I can tell you her name.
Yeah.
Antoinette.
Okay.
Her number in my phone, she just got a new one. I can get that to you too if you want.
Okay. Antoinette. Javante says he was with a female named Antoinette up in Americana Park. It's a neighborhood in North Davenport. My opinion was he was potentially still involved. And in order for him to not be a suspect, he has to provide us information and the ability to corroborate his statement.
Where you're saying that. Witnesses saw someone from a stolen car coming to see you. Or the young person was seen going into the house. So therefore, that leads me to believe that you were probably home. Okay, so who was it?
Who was at your house?
No, it's a couple people that's on the run.
Who's that? It's not like we can find him right now.
Mobley.
Arthur?
Yeah.
Arthur Lobley?
Yeah.
Okay. By the end of Javante's interview, he has placed himself prior to the homicide with someone named Arthur Lobley. Art Lobley, who had recently been released from prison, was currently on probation and had a warrant for his arrest. In this circumstance, since the Keith Smith social media profile had 2 different people in the profile picture, Javante eventually confirms to us that the Keith Smith profile page is a fake profile page, and it was established by the other subject in that photograph was Art Lobley. And another law enforcement officer was able to identify him. So at that point, we're looking for Art Lobley.
We couldn't find Art, and we reached out to the news media to request their assistance and help locating him.
Crime Stoppers is offering a $1,000 reward for the arrest of a Rock Island man, Arthur Lobley, wanted for escape and robbery. He's considered armed and dangerous.
The news media had a $1,000 cash reward for any information in regards to his whereabouts. Eventually, we were able to locate Art, take him into custody, and bring him down to the station for an interview.
Hey, Art. Stop up and grab a seat. Detective Walla, this is Detective Sandberg. Sounds like you talked to Sergeant Ellerbach down on the scene, bald dude. He read you your Miranda warning, just it's still in effect. I would imagine you already know, but in our investigation, this Facebook profile has come into question. That's Javante, that's you. This is your page. So what we want to do right now is, if you want to, we want to give you your opportunity to give us your story about what was going on with this Facebook profile on May 3rd and May 4th. You were talking to a girl named Destiny Orr. Does any of that sound familiar?
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Here are the messages. So you start talking to Destiny on May 1st, actually, and it looks like you're just trying to buy some weed off of her. She asks where you're parked. You say you're parked in the front. So, do you know where
she never pulled up.
Wait, okay, and you're saying she never showed up?
She never showed up.
Okay.
Art admitted to being the person behind the fake Facebook page of Keith Smith and going to the location of where the drug deal was set up for, but he denied that Destiny had ever arrived there.
We can tell Art's not being truthful. The only information he's admitting to is information that we already have.
Did you shoot her?
No. I had nothing to do with that.
Was there anybody else in your car that shot her?
No. No, I don't want to talk about her. He trying to eat. I don't know. I'm cool, man. I'm waiting my lawyer to come or something. I don't want to talk about it.
All right, we'll get you over to county as soon as we can.
It's difficult, but it's expected. If you're expecting to get a confession every single time you speak with these people, you're in the wrong business. You have to be patient.
After we speak with Arthur, a tip came in through Javante's girlfriend's aunt. During that statement, she basically advised Javante was not involved in the homicide, but provided the names of Art and Craig Coleman as two of his associates, and basically stated that they had been at her house planning this robbery. So we have to start doing some background investigation on Craig Coleman. Craig Coleman did have criminal history, but as a juvenile, he was on probation for a stolen vehicle. At this point in time, it was still possible that Craig was the shooter in this incident, but we were still unable to determine that. Craig was staying with his mother in Rock Island. We made an approach to apprehend Craig. When we are going to apprehend a suspect involved in a homicide, we have to take into consideration the level of violence that could occur. Are they armed? Because if they've caused harm to others, there's always a possibility that they can cause you harm.
Craig Coleman is in custody.
You got anything on you?
What?
Officers were able to apprehend Craig, and at that time, Craig did not provide any resistance.
Oh, gee. Oh, 1 second, boss.
What? Bro, they tripping, folks. For real. Davenport, folks. Davenport.
Hey, can you grab this dog?
Can you come and grab this dog?
Oh my God.
What the
What?
Get out. I'm straight for I ain't do.
He was staying with his mother, and when he came outside to let his dog back in, they took him into custody. He was then detained and brought down to the Davenport Police Department for an interview. here. So we just want to first kind of let you tell us what happened the night Destiny Orr died. Craig wanted to speak with us. He said, I'm going to tell you everything. So we think that we're going to get exactly what happened at the time of the homicide. It's super exciting. Okay, from the beginning?
I was on 35th. I got a text from Javante. Next thing I know, he come get me. I get in the car. There's another person in the car with him, Arthur. He was in the front passenger. I didn't even know he was gonna be there, so he went down towards the gas station by Star on 35th.
Okay.
And then it was behind the Star, and then some girl hopped in the car. And then from there we went to Americana. From Americana, Javante switched plans up, got out with the girl, went to go her.
Craig advised that he was with Javante earlier. They pick up Javante's girlfriend, Antoinette. They drive towards Antoinette's house where they drop off Antoinette and Javante. Craig gets into the front passenger seat of that suspect vehicle with Art Lobley.
So I'm thinking we're gonna go, like, try to go back up at the crib. And the dude was like, well, I'm gonna buy some weed. I'm gonna buy some weed real fast. I'm alright. And when I got the weed, we pulled up the famous days and we waited. And then the car pulled up, and that's when some dude got in the back, which now I know his name was Terrence. He got in the back.
Craig's easy to talk to. He's cooperative in that aspect. He states that he witnesses Art rob Terrence from the vehicle, get out, and then rob Destiny at her own vehicle. And then they flee the scene.
He got gas, and then from there, he drove back towards, like, behind Chuck E. Cheese, and we passed him up. When we passed him up, I looked at my little side mirror, because I was in the front passenger now. And I told Art, I'm like, bro, he's gonna shoot you. Or he's gonna shoot at you, basically. Art did it. He pulled in somebody's driveway, did a U-turn. He came back and he was blowing that, shooting that dude. And then he pulled up next to the car and blowing at the car, grabbed the steering wheel, and moving like that.
He believes Terrence has a firearm. Art then swings the vehicle around and proceeds to drive towards the vehicle while shooting. Craig was more forthcoming than Art, which makes us extremely confident that Art Lobley is our shooter.
Sit tight real quick. Bring your pop.
We'll go let you back into the courthouse.
I don't need to bring it with
Walk
you.
you back. If you've done your thing, you don't have to talk anymore, all right?
I would qualify this homicide as a targeted homicide that occurred for no reason outside of gun violence. A weapon was never recovered from the victim vehicle. The homicide is just useless violence.
Art Lobley was charged with murder. The charges were later reduced to voluntary manslaughter and robbery first. He's currently serving 60 years in prison.
Craig Coleman was arrested for murder first. He eventually pled guilty to theft first and was sentenced to 10 years. Once this case concluded, it was very nice to call Destiny's mom and let her know that the two people that we believed were responsible for her daughter's death were arrested and charged and sentenced in this case.
Accepting that she's gone. That's the hardest thing to get past. Accepting that she's truly, really gone.
I felt like when they were sentenced, it wasn't enough time. only because you took her life. So the time you're getting is not going to bring her back. She's gone.
I still have my moments when I break down. I can smell something. Or I can feel her by me. Or if I think she's in the house with us. I believe in that. I believe her spirit be in the house. Or in the car with me. Destiny's with us no matter what.
I want to just give her a big hug. Tell her I miss her. I love her. And everything's gonna be okay.
The city didn't notice the moment it happened. New York rarely does. In 1988, it was too loud, too crowded, too used to violence slipping between cracks in the concrete. Sirens were background noise. Missing people were statistics. And on one late autumn night, just after the bars let out and the streets exhaled their last drunken breath, a life vanished without resistance, without witnesses willing to remember, without enough noise to force the city to stop. The cold case began in silence. A single figure walked east under streetlights that hummed like tired insects. The air smelled of damp trash bags and old metal. Somewhere above, a train rattled across tracks, shaking dust from rusted beams. She had walked this route dozens of times, enough to stop thinking about it, enough to feel safe in repetition. That was the line New York tells best. The last confirmed sighting came from a doorman who looked up for half a second and looked away just as fast. He would later say nothing seemed wrong. No struggle, no raised voices, just another person passing through a city that never asked questions. By morning, the sidewalk was clean. The missing person report was filed late. Too late. Friends waited, assuming she'd stayed out. Family waited longer, trusting routine. When the call finally came, it was already framed in uncertainty. Adult female. No history of running away. No immediate threats. The words sounded neutral, but they carried weight. They determined how fast doors would open, how hard detectives would push. Her apartment offered no drama. No overturned furniture. No shattered glass. A half-read magazine on the couch. A cup left by the sink. Shoes neatly aligned near the door. The kind of normalcy that terrifies investigators because it refuses to explain itself. New York police canvassed the block, knocked on doors, asked questions people didn't want to answer. Most shrugged. Some said they hadn't noticed anything. A few thought they remembered something but couldn't be sure. Memory bends quickly when the city keeps moving. The newspapers gave it a paragraph. Page 6, bottom corner. Another disappearance in a year drowning in them. No photo large enough to fix her face in the public mind. No pressure. No outrage. Days passed, then weeks. A call came in from a payphone 3 blocks away. The voice was low, strained, hurried. The caller claimed to have seen something. Wouldn't say what. Gave a location. Hung up before detectives could trace the line. Officers searched the area. Found nothing. No evidence. No witnesses willing to attach their names to statements. The tip was logged. Filed. Forgotten. Inside the precinct, the case file thickened without growing heavier. Leads circled back on themselves. Names were crossed out. Timelines adjusted. Each revision made the truth harder to reach, not easier. The city offered too many possibilities, and none of them stayed still long enough to be proven. One detective wrote a note in the margin of an early report. Something doesn't fit. No one circled it. No one followed up. It stayed there, quiet, waiting. The neighborhood shifted. Stores changed hands. People moved. Those who stayed learned to forget. Forgetting is a survival skill in New York. You cannot carry every loss. The city would crush you under the weight. The case cooled without ceremony. Years later, technology would transform investigations. DNA, databases, digital records. But this case lived in paper. Ink fading, pages misfiled, boxes stacked in rooms no one entered unless ordered to. It aged the way secrets do, quietly but never completely. Then, during a routine archival review, someone opened the wrong box. Inside was an interview transcript that wasn't supposed to be there. No stamp, no official seal, just typed pages, slightly yellowed, held together by a rusted clip. The interview referenced a man whose name did not appear anywhere else in the case. A witness who was never called a witness. The detective reading it felt the shift immediately. The way the room seems to tilt when the past reaches out and grabs you. The man had been near the scene, claimed to be passing through, gave an alibi that sounded rehearsed. The officer conducting the interview had noted his nervousness. The time, the location, all of it mattered. None of it was followed up. The transcript had been buried by mistake or convenience or something worse. No one could say. The officer who conducted the interview had retired. Some supervisors were dead. The paper trail ended in silence. The case reopened not with a press conference, but with a locked door and a long stare at an old name. They found him living less than 10 miles from where she vanished. Older, heavier, quieter. The kind of man who blends in because he wants to. His address history zigzagged across the city in the years after 1988. Frequent moves, short leases, no obvious criminal record, no obvious reason to look twice. Until now, when detectives knocked, he answered slowly. Recognition flickered and disappeared. He said he remembered the interview, claimed he'd told the truth then and would tell again now. His story matched in shape, but not in detail. Small differences, minor shifts, the kind that build pressure without leaving fingerprints. Investigators started rebuilding the timeline brick by brick. They pulled phone records from obsolete systems, employment logs from companies long dissolved, transit data stored on microfilm. The work was slow, obsessive, relentless. And the city watched. Headlines surfaced like ghosts. 1988 cold case cracked. New York disappearance revisited. Investigators stunned by new evidence. The public appetite was immediate and sharp, because nothing fascinates like the idea that the past can still be held accountable. But beneath the noise was something darker, because as the case came back into focus, so did the failures. Missed chances, ignored instincts, decisions made in a time when speed mattered more than precision. When clearing a case sometimes mattered more than understanding it. The man's alibi unraveled under scrutiny. A coworker he named had died years earlier. A business he referenced had closed months before the date he claimed to be there. These weren't mistakes. They were fractures. Then came the connection no one expected. A mutual acquaintance. Someone who had attended a small gathering weeks before the disappearance. A name that appeared in another old report, unrelated at the time, now screaming for attention. The city had folded the truth over itself, hiding it in plain sight. Detectives felt it tightening. That moment every cold case team lives for, when the distance between question and answer collapses and the silence begins to crack. But the truth was not ready to surface cleanly. Because New York doesn't give answers easily. It demands patience, obsession, the willingness to sit with discomfort and follow it where it leads. And somewhere, buried under decades of movement and noise, the night of 1988 waited, still intact, still watching, still holding onto what happened beneath that flickering streetlight, where the city looked away just long enough for everything to change. The file came back to life the way old wounds do, not all at once, but with a slow, aching pressure that refused to be ignored. Once the transcript was pulled, once the name was spoken aloud in the squad room after decades of silence, everything around it began to shift. Not forward, backward, toward a night that New York had tried to bury under layers of noise and newer crimes. Detectives started where the city always starts when it wants to remember: addresses. They traced her final hours through paper maps and memory, through pay stubs and handwritten notes, through bus routes that no longer existed in bars that had changed names 3 times since 1988. Each location was revisited not as it was now, but as it had been then, darker, dirtier, louder, more dangerous. A city on edge, teetering between chaos and control. Witnesses were recontacted if they were still alive. Some didn't remember her at all. Others remembered too much, but nothing they could swear to. Time had turned certainty into suggestion. Faces blurred, voices softened, but one thing remained consistent: the streetlight. The same one, the buzzing bulb, the corner where she was last seen walking alone. Multiple witnesses, interviewed years apart, all mentioned it without being prompted. An insignificant detail at the time. Now it stood out like a bruise. Investigators pulled maintenance records, city logs, electrical reports from the late 80s. It took days to find anything usable, but when they did, it tightened the knot. The light had been reported malfunctioning for weeks, flickering, dimming, creating brief moments of shadow between pulses of visibility. A perfect place to disappear. The man from the buried interview claimed he was walking home from work, claimed he had stopped briefly under that same light to smoke a cigarette, claimed he noticed nothing unusual. No woman, no struggle, no sound. But his timeline didn't hold. Detectives compared his statement to transit schedules from 1988, cross-referenced with archive union logs. His shift ended later than he claimed. Too late for him to be where he said he was unless he left early, something no record supported. When confronted, he adjusted his story. Just a little. Enough to make it worse. Pressure mounted quietly. No shouting. No threats. Just silence and follow-up questions. The kind that leave room for mistakes. They searched his past, not for violence, but for patterns. And patterns emerged. Proximity, opportunity, familiarity. He had worked near her apartment, passed her block regularly, known people she knew, even if indirectly. The city had overlapped their lives in small, forgettable ways. Until it didn't. A former co-worker remembered a conversation from years ago. At first, he wasn't sure it mattered. It was late. He'd had a few drinks. But the words came back slowly, sharpened by the context investigators provided. A complaint, a fixation, a name mentioned more than once. Hers. The co-worker hadn't reported it at the time. No crime had been committed. No threat had been made. Just talk. And talk is cheap in New York. It gets lost in the noise. That noise had protected someone. As detectives pushed deeper, the case stopped being just about what happened to her and became about how easily it had slipped through the cracks. How assumptions replaced evidence. How early conclusions narrowed vision instead of clarifying it. The original lead detective's notes were reviewed line by line. Some pages were thorough. Others were rushed. One margin contained a phrase, likely voluntary, written with more confidence than justification. That phrase had shaped everything that followed. Because once a case leans toward voluntary disappearance, urgency evaporates. Family members were interviewed again. Older now, tired, still precise. They described her habits in painful detail. Routes, schedules, small routines that anchored her days. None of them fit the idea that she would vanish without contact. One detail stood out. She had mentioned being uncomfortable in the weeks before she disappeared. Not afraid, not panicked, just uneasy, like someone had been watching too closely, following too consistently. She hadn't reported it. She didn't want to overreact. That unease now sat at the center of the investigation. Detectives canvassed old complaint logs, harassment reports, anything that might match her description. They found nothing directly connected, but they did find a pattern of dismissed concerns filed by women in the same area during that period. Incidents logged, then dropped. Names blurred. Faces unremembered. The city had been busy surviving itself. Media attention intensified as details leaked. Reporters framed it as a shocking oversight. A cold case, cracked wide open. Investigators refused to comment beyond confirmation that the case was active. They knew better than to let pressure dictate pace. Behind closed doors, the questions sharpened. Why was the anonymous call never traced further? Why was the interview transcript misfiled? Why did no one question the alibi more aggressively? Each answer pointed not to conspiracy, but to fatigue. Overload. A system stretched thin enough to miss what didn't scream. But the man at the center of the renewed investigation had not screamed either. He had blended. Detectives brought him in again, this time with documents spread across the table. Timelines, maps, Statements highlighted in yellow. They asked him to walk through the night one more time. He hesitated. His breathing changed. He corrected himself mid-sentence. Small tells. Not proof, but pressure. When asked about her directly, he avoided using her name, referred to her as the woman. The distance felt deliberate. Then came the slip. He mentioned a detail that had never been released publicly. Something only someone present would know. The room went still. The detectives didn't react immediately. They let the silence stretch until it became unbearable. He backtracked, claimed he'd heard it somewhere. Couldn't remember where. That was enough. Search warrants followed. His current residence yielded nothing dramatic. No trophies, no photographs, no obvious evidence. But absence again spoke volumes. Too clean, too controlled. A storage unit registered under a variation of his name was next. Inside were boxes of old belongings. Clothes, papers, items that smelled faintly of time and dust. And at the bottom of one box, wrapped in yellowed plastic, something that didn't belong. It wasn't definitive. Not yet, but it was hers. The city exhaled sharply. Investigators knew they were close, but closeness is dangerous. It breeds certainty before certainty is earned. They moved carefully, methodically, every step documented, every conclusion challenged. Because this wasn't just about solving a crime anymore. It was about proving that even in a city built on forgetting, the truth could still force itself back into the light. Flickering, unstable, but impossible to ignore. And somewhere beneath the roar of modern New York, the night of 1988 began to tremble, as if it finally understood that the silence protecting it was breaking. The city seemed to shift around the investigation, as though Manhattan itself was holding its breath. Streetlights flickered in familiar rhythms. Trains rumbled through tunnels like distant warnings. Sidewalks, polished by years of traffic, carried echoes of footsteps that weren't there anymore. And the detectives followed those echoes, tracing her last known movements through alleys, storefronts, and empty corridors that had long since been repurposed. Each step, each door opened, revealed what the city had forgotten and what it had carefully concealed. Her apartment became a focal point once again. The living room, once ordinary, now seemed like a tableau. The cup left on the counter. The chair angled slightly from its original position. Nothing violent, nothing dramatic, yet every object gained significance under the renewed scrutiny. Tiny details were examined. Fingerprints that had survived cleaning, dust patterns that suggested someone had lingered, even briefly, in places that should have remained untouched. The ordinary had become extraordinary. Neighbors, some decades older, some long relocated, were interviewed repeatedly. Faces were recalled with difficulty. Voices cracked under the weight of time. One elderly man remembered a shadow that seemed to follow her down the block, though he hadn't paid it any attention at the time. Another recalled the distant sound of a car door shutting in the wrong place. An inconsequential sound then, now a potential clue. Memory, detectives realized, was like a sedimented river, layers of water and silt, sometimes revealing shapes when disturbed. The man from the misfiled interview became a focal point of scrutiny. He maintained his composure publicly, but small tells betrayed him. A twitch at the corner of the mouth, a hesitation in his voice, a finger tracing the edge of a document when he thought no one was watching. Investigators began to map his life meticulously, reconstructing his every movement from payroll records, apartment leases, and fleeting sightings in old witness statements. The map revealed patterns that intersected with her known routines, patterns that could not be coincidental. One breakthrough came when detectives obtained transit schedules from 1988 and compared them to his supposed movements. Gaps appeared, unexplained absences, discrepancies in timing that contradicted his statements. Each inconsistency added weight, a pressure point in an investigation that had been dormant for decades. It was subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but collectively, these details formed a lattice of suspicion. They also revisited the anonymous tip from years earlier. The call had never been traced then, but modern technology allowed a fresh attempt. Phone records were cross-referenced with city directories. Locations triangulated. The investigation revealed a series of payphones in areas he was known to frequent. The timing aligned. It suggested, though could not yet prove, his involvement. It was circumstantial, fragile, but enough to reopen the lens of scrutiny. Media attention surged again. Headlines screamed about the cold case reheated after decades, the city gripped with renewed curiosity. Yet in the squad room, detectives moved with caution. They knew the danger of public pressure. Sensationalism could undermine methodical investigation, turning witnesses into storytellers rather than informants, shifting focus from evidence to narrative. They allowed the noise to exist outside, while inside, the work continued with deliberate patience. Family members were approached once more. The years had etched lines into their faces, a testament to enduring uncertainty. Their testimonies were revisited with care. Patterns emerged. She had expressed unease in her final weeks, subtle shifts in routine, fleeting mentions of being followed, of noticing the same figure repeatedly in the background. Each recollection, fragmented by decades, was carefully pieced together, forming a composite image of her final moments alive. It was a reconstruction not of what she did, but of what she experienced. Detectives began to see the city differently. Alleys and stairwells, once familiar, took on new significance. Every shadow became a potential witness. Each intersection, each bus stop, a marker in time. They recreated the night on foot, following the sequence as reconstructed, noting where light flickered, where doors opened and closed, where movement could be masked by noise. The city itself became a witness, and every overlooked detail from 1988 now demanded attention. One morning, a discovery shifted the trajectory. A storage unit, long rented under an alias connected to the man in question, contained items long forgotten. Papers, clothing, objects that smelled faintly of the decade in which they had been last touched. Inside one carefully sealed package, wrapped in plastic, was something unmistakably hers. Personal, identifiable, hidden deliberately or accidentally. It wasn't a body. It wasn't the resolution of the mystery. But it was proof that the past could no longer remain ignored. The revelation sent tremors through the investigative team. The cold case was no longer an abstract file. It had flesh, presence, undeniable proof that connected her to the man whose life had been quietly traced in shadows and misfiled documents. Each small piece of evidence, innocuous on its own, converged into a lattice of inevitability. The city, decades later, demanded that attention be paid. Forensic analysis advanced rapidly. Fibers, DNA traces, chemical residues, remnants preserved by the routine indifference of time, now became testimony. Modern techniques applied to old evidence revealed what had been invisible to investigators in 1988. The science spoke in precise, unyielding terms, confirming that her disappearance had not been random, not voluntary, and not a fluke of circumstance. The cold case had acquired substance, and substance carries weight. Interviews intensified. Witnesses who had long avoided recollection were coaxed gently, sometimes pushed, to remember the faintest details. A crack in a memory, a hesitation, a change in tone, all became valuable. The investigators knew that years of silence could distort, but not erase entirely. Consistencies, even if subtle, were now triangulated against evidence. Each corroboration tightened the net. The man under scrutiny became increasingly anxious under scrutiny. His public calm eroded with repeated questioning. Small contradictions, when juxtaposed against modern reconstructions and corroborated witness accounts, created a pressure that could not be ignored. Every adjustment in his story, every pause, every denial, was recorded and cataloged. Investigators were patient, letting his own recollections unravel under methodical weight rather than aggressive confrontation. Pressure, quiet and relentless, revealed more than interrogation ever could. The city itself seemed complicit. Its grid, its shadows, its overlooked corners had once allowed her to vanish. Now, it offered up records, archival photographs, business ledgers, and structural maps, all contributing to the reassembly of that night. Old surveillance, maintenance logs, utility records all became tools. The pulse of Manhattan, recorded in numbers, documents, and memory, stitched together the fractured timeline. Then a breakthrough occurred with an overlooked connection. Someone she knew indirectly, an acquaintance from months prior to her disappearance, was linked to the man under investigation. Previously deemed irrelevant, the connection now formed a web that suggested opportunity and proximity. Nothing definitive yet, but the pattern grew stronger, more coherent, impossible to dismiss. The city's lattice of chance and coincidence now felt deliberate, intentional, orchestrated. Public interest heightened. Reporters began digging. Old stories resurfaced. Friends, neighbors, and co-workers were interviewed, not for sensation, but for clarity. Each account, layered atop decades of oversight, revealed how many times the truth had nearly emerged and how often it had been pushed aside. The community, long complicit in forgetfulness, now watched as investigators re-examined the quiet corners, the small observations, the subtle fears. The investigation became obsessive, comprehensive, and unrelenting. Every fragment, every overlooked statement, every discarded lead was revisited. Maps were drawn, timelines reconstructed with exacting precision, witness accounts cross-referenced, locations resurveyed. The case, once dormant, now moved like a tidal wave, inexorable, silent, and terrifyingly complete. Yet as momentum built, so did risk. The man in question realized that invisibility no longer protected him. His routine, once flawless, became a subject of scrutiny. Old alibis fell apart. Travel logs contradicted claimed locations. Friends who had once defended his presence now admitted uncertainty. And the smallest detail, decades overlooked, threatened to unravel everything. Detectives approached the final stages with quiet intensity. There were no announcements, no celebratory press statements. Each move was calculated, precise. Every piece of evidence verified multiple times. They knew that premature exposure could destroy credibility, jeopardize testimony, and allow chance to intervene again. The case demanded patience as exacting as the city itself. And somewhere, beneath the hum of traffic, the whine of overhead trains, and the constant background noise that had once hidden her disappearance, the truth began to solidify. Not loudly, not violently, not triumphantly, just as a shadow finally takes shape in dim light, subtle, undeniable, chilling. The night of 1988, under the flickering streetlight, under the distant rumble of Manhattan, was no longer a void. Every detail, every shadow, every fragment of memory converged toward clarity. The cold case, long dormant, had begun to speak, and New York, which had once been indifferent, had no choice but to listen. The city had changed, but the night of her disappearance had left an imprint that refused to fade. Every cracked sidewalk, every buzzing streetlight, every subway station she might have passed carried the weight of possibility. Detectives retraced those possibilities with meticulous care, threading their way through a Manhattan that had been scrubbed clean of much of its past, yet still clinging stubbornly to the outlines of that night. They walked the same blocks she had, felt the same chill from wind tunnels between buildings, noticed the way shadows pooled near doorways and fire escapes. The city itself became evidence, a living witness unwilling to forget. Neighbors were interviewed again. Older now, quieter, more reflective, they remembered differently, or perhaps remembered the same things differently. One recalled a door slamming that didn't belong to her. Another mentioned a figure loitering on a corner, observing, waiting. Details that had seemed trivial in 1988 now resonated like echoes. Detectives cataloged them meticulously, aware that decades of silence often amplify fragments, turning whispers into crucial testimony. They didn't rush. They didn't speculate. They let each recollection hang in the air, weighing it against everything else, looking for patterns invisible at first glance. The man at the center of the investigation grew more guarded. He maintained a calm exterior, but subtle tells betrayed his tension. A flicker in his gaze, a pause too long before answering. Hands that fidgeted when no one was looking. Investigators examined his past, tracing every move, every job, every known contact. They discovered overlaps, coincidences, and connections previously dismissed. Each one alone was meaningless, but together they formed a lattice that began to illuminate the shadow he had lived in for decades. Opportunity had aligned with access in ways the city had conveniently ignored for years. Evidence that had been overlooked surfaced in unexpected ways. Payroll records, bus schedules, and microfilm of employment logs revealed discrepancies in his stated whereabouts. His timeline, once unchallenged, began to unravel under scrutiny. Small contradictions, minute in isolation, aggregated into a portrait of proximity and potential intent. Investigators didn't rush to conclusions. They let the pressure of accumulated facts do the work. The truth, patient as a predator, revealed itself piece by piece. Old friends and acquaintances were re-interviewed. Memories, fragile and inconsistent, were cross-referenced, triangulated. One former coworker recalled a fleeting conversation, dismissed at the time, now recontextualized. She had mentioned feeling uneasy, though she hadn't said why. Another witness remembered seeing someone familiar in the area multiple times over a short period. Small actions, once ignored, now suggested a deliberate pattern. The web grew, intricate and delicate, but undeniably real. The city's physical record also contributed. Photographs from street surveillance, maintenance logs for streetlights, utility service records, all offered fragments of corroboration. Investigators reconstructed the environment as it existed decades prior. The flickering bulbs, the half-empty streets, the placement of parked cars, the shadows they cast. Each detail mattered. In cold cases, even the smallest inconsistency can crack open a story decades old. New York's pulse, recorded in the hum of electricity and the creak of subway tracks, became a witness itself. Then came the storage unit, hidden under a slight variation of his name, rented years ago, long forgotten. Boxes stacked high, dusty, neglected. Inside, possessions carefully preserved, evidence of a life lived in quiet concealment. Among the mundane, old clothing, papers, personal effects, was something unmistakably hers. Wrapped in plastic, yellowed with age, the object confirmed proximity, raised questions, and shattered the protective layer of invisibility. Investigators felt the weight immediately. It wasn't a resolution, but it was undeniable. The past was no longer optional to ignore. Forensic testing brought clarity and precision. Fibers, residues, even chemical traces remained intact, waiting for modern analysis. DNA technology, unavailable in 1988, now offered answers that had once seemed impossible. Each positive match, each confirmation, tightened the net around the truth. The investigators worked methodically, aware that even small missteps could allow the thread to slip through their fingers. Every result was verified, every finding double-checked, every procedural step documented. Patience became their ally, precision their weapon. Witnesses, once reluctant, now found their courage. Years of silence broke under careful questioning. One person remembered details only vaguely, yet in combination with physical evidence and corroborating accounts, their recollections became crucial. Memory, malleable yet persistent, revealed itself in fragments, revealing movement patterns, timing, and interactions that had been dismissed for decades. The city had held the secret, but people, too, had held it in quiet, unspoken ways, waiting for someone to connect the dots. The man's responses grew increasingly inconsistent under scrutiny. Minor corrections in timing, small shifts in phrasing, subtle contradictions. Alone, these might have seemed trivial. Together, they painted a picture of proximity, of opportunity, of deliberate orchestration. Investigators allowed him to speak, to reconstruct the night in his own words. The pressure of the room, combined with decades of accumulated evidence, exposed cracks in his story he couldn't repair. Each hesitation, each misstep, added weight to a case that had been fragile for 30 years. As the investigation progressed, detectives reconstructed the final hours with meticulous attention. Maps of the city from 1988 were overlaid with transit schedules, work records, witness accounts. Foot traffic patterns were analyzed. The sequence of streetlight flickers, the timing of passing trains, the placement of vehicles. Everything contributed to an environment that had allowed a disappearance to occur unnoticed. The city itself, once indifferent, now revealed its secrets under careful observation. Small, overlooked connections emerged. Friends of friends, acquaintances of acquaintances, interactions previously deemed irrelevant now provided critical context. A shared location, a brief exchange, a fleeting gesture. Alone, insignificant. Together, undeniable. The web of proximity, opportunity, and unobserved intent solidified. Investigators recognized that the absence of evidence in 1988 had been amplified by the city's indifference, by procedural fatigue, by assumptions that misled an entire investigation. Media attention intensified again. Headlines proclaimed breakthroughs, revival of a decades-old case. Public interest surged. Yet in the precinct, the work remained calm, methodical, relentless. Sensationalism could wait. Evidence demanded patience. Investigation required discipline. Every move was deliberate, every conclusion tentative until confirmed. The cold case no longer belonged to the public eye. It belonged to truth, slow and inexorable. Family members, older and wearied by uncertainty, revisited memories with investigators. Patterns became clearer, routines she had followed, minor deviations from ordinary behavior, fleeting expressions of discomfort, moments of observation unnoticed at the time. The investigators pieced together a sequence of events, reconstructing not only her movements, but the subtle, almost imperceptible cues of danger she may have perceived. The past, once chaotic, gained structure. The night of her disappearance crystallized in layers of detail. Flickering lights, the placement of a single car, the angles of shadows, the sounds of distant trains, the temperature, the smells carried on the wind. Every element, once inconsequential, now contributed to the larger understanding. The city, once indifferent, became an archive. Every overlooked fragment of the urban landscape contributed to the emerging narrative. Investigators noticed patterns of evasion in the man under suspicion. Behavioral cues, gaps in recollection, avoidance of specific questions, small lies intertwined with truth, creating an intricate maze for the detectives to navigate. Each adjustment, each hesitation, revealed the pressure of truth closing in after decades. They allowed him space, observing how consistency failed under the weight of accumulated evidence. Finally, tangible evidence and witness accounts began to converge. A path emerged, clear enough to see, but still fragile, still contingent. Every detail mattered. The placement of objects, the timing of interactions, the alignment of human behavior with city rhythms. Investigators meticulously documented each correlation, ensuring the chain of connections remained unbroken. The cold case, dormant for decades, now pulsed with life. The city, with all its noise and chaos, held its secrets too long. The streetlights flickered as detectives revisited familiar corners. Shadows stretched across sidewalks where footsteps had once gone unrecorded. New York, alive and indifferent, had concealed a crime in plain sight. But the slow accumulation of memory, evidence, and observation revealed what had been hidden. The night of 1988, once a void, now existed in full, intricate detail. The investigation, relentless and precise, forced the truth to surface. Not violently, not with spectacle, quietly, meticulously, inevitably. The cold case was no longer a file gathering dust. It was a story reconstructed, a disappearance examined, a city compelled to remember. And beneath it all, the past exerted pressure on the present, ensuring that the silence of decades could no longer protect those who had walked away while a life vanished under a flickering streetlight. The walls of the precinct seemed to close in as the investigation deepened. Files stacked in uneven towers, yellowed with age, whispered secrets long ignored. Each page told a fragment of a story, fragments that had been dismissed or misplaced, fragments that now demanded attention. Detectives moved carefully through the paper maze, tracing every lead, every name, every seemingly trivial note. The smallest detail could unravel decades of silence. And in cold cases, time is a force as merciless as the crime itself. They returned to the street where she had vanished. The corner under the flickering light had aged, yet the same pattern persisted. The hum, the subtle pulse, the shadowed edges where vision falters. Investigators walked slowly, noting angles, imagining movement, reconstructing the rhythm of that night with obsessive precision. The city held its breath around them. Cars passed, pedestrians hurried, unaware that the ordinary street bore witness to a crime that had waited 30 years to be understood. Neighbors remembered differently than they had before. Age had blurred faces but sharpened perception. One recalled a figure crossing the street in the wrong direction, pausing near a doorway, watching. Another remembered a door shutting softly behind someone who had no reason to enter. Memories, inconsistent and fragmented, were pieced together with painstaking care. Each fragment became a line of the map, connecting her last movements to shadows, to light, to possibility. The narrative emerged slowly, as if the city itself were reluctant to reveal its role. The man under investigation maintained an outward calm, but subtle tells betrayed tension. A twitch of the eyebrow, a pause before answering, hands that smoothed the edge of papers instinctively, hiding nerves. His life, reconstructed through decades of movement, employment, acquaintances, revealed intersections with hers that had gone unnoticed. Proximity, opportunity, familiarity. The city's indifference had shielded him for years, but now those intersections were exposed, undeniable. Investigators examined old employment logs, bus schedules, and archived payroll records. Each discrepancy, each minor contradiction, became significant under the lens of renewed scrutiny. His timeline, once accepted, began to fray. Minor differences, previously overlooked, now suggested concealment. Every explanation he offered was weighed against the evidence, every adjustment cataloged meticulously. The accumulation of inconsistencies painted a picture of deliberate obfuscation. Opportunity, once invisible, now glowed with clarity. Witnesses were coaxed to remember, and memory, fragile yet persistent, began to emerge in pieces. One former co-worker recalled a conversation once deemed trivial. She had mentioned feeling uneasy, observed someone lingering. Another remembered seeing someone familiar in the area repeatedly over several nights. Alone, these details were insignificant. Together, they formed a pattern impossible to ignore. The web of human movement, observed and reconstructed, revealed what the city had allowed to remain hidden for decades. The storage unit became a focal point. Boxes packed and abandoned, labeled with variations of his name, contained items that had been carefully preserved. Among the mundane, old clothing, papers, personal effects, was an object unmistakably hers. Wrapped in aged plastic, it bore the marks of concealment. It was not dramatic, not violent, but it confirmed what suspicion had suggested: proximity, presence, deliberate concealment. The past, long buried, demanded acknowledgement. Forensic analysis advanced the case further. Fibers, residues, and traces preserved by time yielded information under modern techniques. DNA, once impossible to isolate, now provided clarity. Each positive match strengthened the investigators' understanding of events. Their work was methodical, precise. Every detail verified, every step documented. Patience became their ally, precision their instrument. The city itself, in the form of preserved evidence, conspired to reveal what had been hidden. The man's statements began to fracture under scrutiny. Minor adjustments, small contradictions, subtle evasions accumulated into a larger pattern. Alone, each seemed trivial. Together, they revealed pressure points and proximity. Investigators allowed him to recount events in his own words, observing for shifts in timing, for hesitations, for inconsistencies. Each moment of silence, each pause, was as telling as spoken evidence. Decades of indifference could not erase the accumulation of truth. The city contributed further. Maintenance logs, electrical reports, old photographs, utility records, all offered fragments that corroborated witness accounts. Investigators reconstructed the environment of 1988, flickering streetlights, parked cars casting distorted shadows, distant train rumblings masking minor sounds. Every detail mattered. In cold cases, even the most inconsequential observation can become crucial decades later. The urban landscape, silent and enduring, revealed what memory alone could not. Connections emerged unexpectedly. An acquaintance from months prior, previously deemed irrelevant, was linked to both the victim and the man under investigation. Media attention surged. Headlines announced breakthroughs. Public interest intensified. Yet inside the precinct, investigators worked quietly, deliberately. Evidence dictated pace, not public curiosity. The cold case demanded methodical precision. Sensationalism could wait. Facts could not. Every action was calculated. Every discovery verified. The truth was patient, but it would not be denied indefinitely. Family members revisited memories with investigators. Patterns emerged: routine, minor deviations, fleeting discomfort, subtle observations she had made. The detectives pieced together a reconstruction not just of movements, but of perception. They examined what she may have seen, felt, or feared. Her final hours, once a void, began to take shape through the convergence of memory, evidence, and environmental reconstruction. The past, once chaotic and inaccessible, was now being methodically clarified. The night she disappeared crystallized with astonishing detail. Flickering lights, shadow angles, distant noises, scents carried on the wind, objects out of place, all became markers in the narrative. Each observation, trivial when isolated, contributed to a coherent sequence of events. The city, which had once facilitated her disappearance, now provided testimony. Every overlooked fragment of urban life, every faint recollection, became a point of convergence for the emerging truth. Investigators noted behavioral patterns in the man under scrutiny. Gaps in memory, avoidance of specific questions, minor lies intertwined with truth. Alone, insignificant. Together, unmistakable. The pressure of decades finally bore down. Patience and meticulous reconstruction forced the fractures to surface. His carefully constructed facade, maintained for 30 years, began to crumble under the weight of accumulated scrutiny. Evidence and witness testimony converged. A timeline emerged, clear yet delicate. Every detail mattered. The placement of objects, timing of interactions, alignment of human behavior with city rhythms, all were critical. The cold case, dormant for decades, now pulsed with renewed clarity, precision, and inevitability. Investigators understood that the crime had been long hidden, protected by indifference and oversight, but it could no longer remain invisible. The city itself, indifferent yet watchful, had allowed the disappearance to occur. Now, the same streets, shadows, and corners revealed what had once been hidden. Footsteps traced patterns, vehicles recorded movement, faint memories corroborated evidence. New York, alive and unrelenting, had held the truth in quiet complicity. But the accumulation of observation, reconstruction, and forensic science had shifted the balance. Silence was no longer protection. The investigation became obsessive, comprehensive, relentless. Every fragment, every overlooked statement, every discarded lead was revisited. Maps were drawn, timelines reconstructed, witness accounts cross-referenced, locations resurveyed. The past, long dormant, demanded attention. Each small success, each revelation built momentum. The detectives moved as if guided by decades of accumulated instinct. The city itself, a map of opportunity, concealment, and now exposure. Finally, the tangible and intangible converged. Witness accounts, forensic evidence, environmental reconstruction, behavioral analysis, all pointed in one direction. The night of 1988, once a blank void, now had contours. Shadows, footsteps, movements, observations, they coalesced into a coherent narrative. The man at the center of scrutiny could no longer hide in the gaps. Opportunity, proximity, and concealment became undeniable. The past, patient as it was, demanded recognition. The cold case, once a silent file gathering dust, now breathed with renewed life. Investigators moved carefully, verifying every correlation, confirming each detail, ensuring the chain of evidence was unbroken. The narrative of disappearance, reconstruction, and hidden presence unfolded with precision. The city, which had allowed a crime to vanish, now bore witness to its revelation. Silence was shattered. Truth emerged in increments, precise, deliberate, inescapable. And through it all, the memory of her remained central. Not just as a victim, but as a presence that shaped the investigation, demanded accuracy, and refused to be forgotten. The cold case was no longer abstract. It was tangible, immersive, unavoidable. The city, investigators, and evidence converged around a singular, undeniable fact. A life had vanished, someone had facilitated it, and the consequences, delayed but unavoidable, were now coming into view. The air in the precinct felt heavier than usual, charged with the weight of decades-old secrets finally surfacing. Every desk, every file cabinet, every flickering fluorescent light seemed complicit in the patience of the past. Detectives moved with quiet urgency, tracing the intricate web of movement, opportunity, and observation that had allowed her disappearance to remain unsolved for 30 years. Each piece of evidence, no matter how small, was scrutinized under the unforgiving lens of time and modern forensic science. Nothing was trivial anymore. Everything mattered. They returned repeatedly to the scene, the corner under the flickering streetlight that had seen her last. The bulb's rhythmic buzz seemed almost like a heartbeat, syncing with the pulse of the investigation. Shadows pooled in familiar places, distorted by new construction, yet revealing the same contours that had existed in 1988. Sidewalk cracks, uneven curbs, metal gratings, all became potential witnesses, holding traces of movement and sound that could now be imagined and reconstructed. Investigators moved slowly, deliberately, as though each step could stir the echoes of that fateful night into audible form. Witnesses were called again, their memories fragile yet persistent. Faces had aged, voices trembled with years, but fragments of recollection emerged. Gestures, fleeting observations, anomalous behavior that had been ignored or dismissed at the time. One neighbor remembered a figure loitering near a doorway, just beyond the reach of the flickering light, too subtle to notice in real time, but now unmistakably significant. Another recalled an unusual sound of a car door closing at a time that conflicted with the official timeline. These fragments, when meticulously cataloged, began to form a mosaic of her last movements. The man under investigation became increasingly uneasy. His outward calm masked subtle physical tells. Restless fingers tracing the edges of papers, a twitch at the corner of his mouth, hesitations that betrayed the cracks in his story. Investigators meticulously reconstructed his life, mapping intersections with hers that had previously been overlooked. Employment locations, transit routes, acquaintances, and social routines all intersected in ways that suggested opportunity and presence. The city, indifferent for decades, had inadvertently documented his proximity to the unfolding crime. Investigators pored over decades-old employment records, bus schedules, and union logs. Discrepancies emerged, contradictions too significant to dismiss. Minor gaps in his timeline now seemed deliberate, a pattern of concealment stretching back to the night she vanished. Every inconsistency became a clue, every evasive answer a pressure point. Patience, methodical verification, and the relentless accumulation of evidence forced the narrative to emerge. Opportunity had existed, proximity had been maintained, and concealment had been deliberate. The storage unit, rented under a variation of his name, revealed its secrets next. Boxes packed and forgotten, filled with mundane objects, clothing, papers, personal items, revealed what he had sought to hide. Buried at the bottom, wrapped in decades-old plastic, was something unmistakably hers. Not a body, not dramatic in a sensational sense, but undeniable proof of presence, of contact, of concealment. The discovery validated suspicion and gave urgency to every prior observation, every fragmented memory, every overlooked document. The past had asserted itself. Forensic analysis intensified. Fibers, residue, and traces preserved by time yielded critical information under modern techniques. DNA, once inaccessible, now confirmed proximity and connection. Every result, verified multiple times, strengthened the narrative of her disappearance. Investigators moved methodically, recognizing the fragility of decades-old evidence. Every step was deliberate, every finding double-checked, every conclusion tempered by the caution that only experience and history can teach. The cold case was no longer dormant. It breathed with the weight of accumulated truth. Witnesses revealed more under careful questioning. Small details, initially deemed insignificant, gained prominence when juxtaposed with new evidence. One former co-worker remembered a brief remark she had made about feeling watched, initially dismissed. Another recalled someone lingering in the background on multiple occasions. Alone, these memories were ephemeral. Together, they created a pattern of presence and observation. The web of human interaction, once obscured by time and neglect, now emerged with clarity, binding the pieces of the puzzle together. Behavioral patterns of the man, under scrutiny, became increasingly revealing. Minor contradictions, avoidance of key questions, inconsistencies in timing, each initially trivial, collectively significant. Investigators allowed him to recount events in his own words, observing for hesitation, alteration, and unintentional disclosure. Each pause, each subtle change in phrasing, became evidence in its own right. Decades of indifference could not erase the accumulation of truth, and the pressure of scrutiny forced inconsistencies to surface with precision. The city itself provided corroboration. Maintenance logs, streetlight reports, old photographs, and utility records offered context for witness accounts. Investigators reconstructed the environment of 1988. The flickering lights, shadows cast by parked vehicles, the hum of distant trains masking subtle sounds. Each detail, once ignored, became essential. Cold cases hinge on observation, on noticing what others dismiss. The urban landscape, silent yet enduring, spoke volumes once examined with patience and forensic rigor. Connections that had previously seemed irrelevant emerged with significance. An acquaintance from months before, a fleeting interaction, a casual conversation. These small intersections now illuminated opportunity and proximity. The city, once indifferent, now seemed to reveal a deliberate sequence. Moments, actions, and places that converged toward a singular night. The gaps and silences of the past were dismantled by careful reconstruction, revealing the architecture of concealment that had protected a crime for decades. Public attention surged. Headlines proclaimed a breakthrough in a decades-old disappearance. Interest in the story grew, yet inside the precinct, investigators remained focused on methodical, deliberate work. Media scrutiny could wait. Evidence could not. The case demanded precision, not spectacle. Every new development was meticulously documented, every correlation verified. The cold case had evolved from a file gathering dust to a living, breathing investigation, impervious to distraction and immune to shortcuts. Family members provided additional insight. Their memories, sharpened by time, revealed patterns, daily routines, deviations, fleeting observations, and subtle discomfort. Investigators reconstructed not only her movements, but her perception of the world. The nuances, the shifts, the brief moments of unease that hinted at danger. Her final hours were reconstructed in layers, from environmental details to human interactions. The past, once chaotic, now had structure, clarity, and weight. The night of her disappearance crystallized through meticulous reconstruction. Flickering lights, shadow patterns, distant sounds, and even odors formed a sequence that revealed opportunity and concealment. Each minor detail, previously dismissed, now had significance. The city, which had once shielded the truth, now provided testimony. Every overlooked fragment of urban life, every faint memory, contributed to the emerging narrative. The past was no longer hidden. It demanded recognition. Behavioral patterns of the man under scrutiny continued to unravel. Hesitations, minor lies, avoidance of specific questions, all combined to create an unmistakable pattern of proximity and possible intent. Investigators observed, noted, and cataloged every nuance. His composure, maintained for decades, now faltered under the weight of accumulated evidence and methodical reconstruction. The past was relentless, and his careful concealment was proving fragile. Evidence and witness accounts converged. A coherent timeline emerged, delicate yet undeniable. Every object placement, every interaction, every alignment with environmental cues contributed to a narrative that had been hidden for decades. The cold case, dormant and forgotten, now pulsed with clarity. Investigators recognized the gravity of their task. They were reconstructing a sequence of events long obscured by oversight, chance, and indifference, now revealed through patience, persistence, and precision. The city itself, indifferent yet eternal, had allowed the disappearance to occur. Now, the same streets, shadows, and corners revealed what had once been hidden. Footsteps traced patterns, vehicles recorded movement, faint memories corroborated evidence. New York, alive and unyielding, had preserved the past in its infrastructure and its people. The accumulation of observation, reconstruction, and forensic evidence shifted the balance. Silence could no longer protect concealment. Investigation became obsessive, comprehensive, relentless. Every fragment, every overlooked statement, every discarded lead was re-examined. Maps were drawn, timelines reconstructed, witness accounts cross-referenced, locations resurveyed. The past demanded attention. Momentum built with each verified detail, each corroborated memory, each physical trace recovered from storage units, files, and environmental records. The detectives, methodical and patient, allowed the narrative to emerge organically from the convergence of fact and memory. Ultimately, tangible evidence and human recollection converged. The night of 1988, once a void in time, now had contours. Shadows, movements, interactions, and observations formed a coherent, undeniable sequence. The man under scrutiny could no longer hide in ambiguity. Proximity, opportunity, and concealment were evident. Decades of indifference could not prevent exposure. The city, patient and observant, had yielded its secrets. The cold case, long dormant, pulsed with the inevitability of revelation. The investigation now demanded verification and consolidation. Every correlation was documented, every detail confirmed, every narrative thread carefully checked. The cold case had evolved into a precise reconstruction, a meticulous charting of absence, observation, and concealment. The city, which had once facilitated her disappearance, now bore witness to its revelation. Silence was shattered. Truth emerged inexorably, patient, deliberate, unavoidable. The past, long dormant, finally spoke with clarity and precision. The city seemed to pulse with its own memory as investigators traced the final sequences of her disappearance. Every corner, every lamppost, every uneven sidewalk was cataloged, measured, reconstructed. Manhattan's hum, once ignored, now carried meaning. The distant screech of a train, the faint thrum of late-night traffic, the whisper of wind through alleyways, all became part of a symphony of observation. Detectives moved deliberately, like archaeologists of time, uncovering layers that had been buried beneath decades of indifference, neglect, and forgotten routine. Witnesses were revisited once more. Their recollections, altered by age and perspective, revealed new subtleties. One neighbor remembered a shadow lingering near a doorway, the shape shifting, observing, retreating. Another recalled a car that never should have been there, the engine cut and restarted without notice, a sound that had been dismissed as ordinary at the time. Each fragment, though small, was now vital. Investigators meticulously cross-referenced these fragments with environmental data, streetlight logs, subway schedules, and archived photographs. The city's memory had been dormant, but it now revealed itself in intricate detail. The man under investigation became increasingly tense under scrutiny. His composure, once near flawless, revealed micro-expressions, a tightening of the jaw, an unintentional glance at the floor, fingers tapping an unconscious rhythm on the table. Investigators had reconstructed his movements for decades, noting every intersection with hers, every moment when paths crossed. Employment records, apartment leases, transit logs, and minor acquaintances revealed a lattice of proximity. Opportunity had been constant, concealed by time, ignored by circumstance, and preserved by the city's indifference. Old documents, long overlooked, were re-examined. Payroll records, employment logs, bus passes, and dated receipts created inconsistencies in his timeline. Minor contradictions, once deemed trivial, now hinted at deliberate obfuscation. Each inconsistency was meticulously cataloged, mapped, and weighed against other evidence. The accumulation of small anomalies created a pressure no alibi could withstand. The man's story, carefully crafted and maintained for decades, began to unravel under the relentless application of logic, observation, and the patient excavation of time. Witness accounts provided layers of insight. One co-worker recalled her expressing unease about being watched, a fleeting remark once ignored. Another mentioned seeing someone familiar at multiple locations around her routine, a figure in the background she may have noticed but never mentioned explicitly. Alone, these accounts were fragile. Together, they became part of a growing mosaic. Every observation, every recollection, every hesitant statement built a structure that could no longer be ignored. The past was asserting itself in ways both subtle and undeniable. The storage unit, a relic of forgotten concealment, revealed a tangible link. Boxes, long abandoned, contained clothing, personal items, and papers. At the bottom of one container was an object unmistakably hers, wrapped in yellowed plastic and preserved in secrecy. Not sensational, not violent, but irrefutable, evidence of presence and deliberate concealment. Investigators recognized the significance immediately. The past, long dormant, was asserting itself. Silence could no longer protect those who had sought to hide the truth. Forensic science provided the clarity that decades-old testimony could not. Fibers, residues, and trace elements preserved by time were analyzed with modern techniques. DNA, once unavailable, confirmed connection and proximity. Each result was verified, re-verified, and then integrated into the growing narrative. The investigators worked with precision, knowing that a single misstep could undo months of painstaking reconstruction. In cold cases, patience is essential. In this case, it became an instrument of inevitability. Behavioral analysis of the man in question revealed patterns of evasion. Minor contradictions, pauses, hesitations, avoidance of key questions, all pointed to concealed knowledge. Investigators allowed him to narrate events in his own words, observing micro-changes, subtle stress indicators, and inconsistencies. Each nuance, when cataloged and compared with environmental and forensic evidence, revealed a trajectory of intent and presence. Decades of assumed invisibility could not withstand the systematic scrutiny of methodical reconstruction. The city itself became a witness. Maintenance logs, electrical reports, streetlight schedules, archival photographs, and utility records all corroborated witness accounts. Investigators reconstructed the environment of 1988 with meticulous attention. Flickering lights, shadows cast by parked cars, background noise of distant trains masking subtle sounds, even the positioning of discarded objects. Each detail, seemingly trivial at the time, became a key component of a larger puzzle. Manhattan had preserved its memory, awaiting investigators precise enough to decode it. Unexpected connections emerged. A casual acquaintance, dismissed decades ago, now provided a crucial link. Shared locations, brief encounters, and minor interactions revealed a pattern of proximity and opportunity. The city, once indifferent, now felt orchestrated, moments, actions, and places converging toward that single, decisive night. The deliberate gaps and silences that had shielded the crime were dismantled by careful reconstruction, exposing the architecture of concealment long protected by time. Media attention surged anew. Headlines proclaimed breakthroughs in the decades-old case, stirring public curiosity. Yet in the precinct, investigators remained focused on methodical verification. Evidence dictated pace, spectacle could wait. Every correlation was double-checked. Every lead validated. The cold case, long dormant, had evolved into a living, breathing investigation, immune to distraction, anchored in meticulous reconstruction and forensic certainty. Family members contributed further insight. Memories sharpened by decades revealed patterns, daily routines, subtle deviations, fleeting expressions of unease, and signs of vigilance that hinted at danger. Investigators reconstructed not just movement, but perception, how she might have experienced the city, the people around her, the subtle shifts that signaled threat. Her final hours, once lost to time, were now reconstructed layer by layer, merging memory, evidence, and environmental context into a coherent narrative. The night of her disappearance crystallized in detail. Flickering lights, shifting shadows, distant noises, even ambient odors formed a timeline of opportunity, concealment, and motion. Each element, once ignored or forgotten, became crucial. The city, complicit in its indifference, now testified through observation, documentation, and reconstruction. Every overlooked fragment of urban life, every faint memory, contributed to the emerging truth. Silence had been the protector. Now it was powerless. The behavioral patterns of the man under scrutiny continued to reveal themselves. Hesitations, avoidance, inconsistencies, micro-expressions, all formed a coherent pattern of proximity, intent, and knowledge. Investigators cataloged and verified each detail, building an unbroken chain. The carefully maintained facade, preserved over decades, began to crumble under relentless scrutiny. Every small detail added pressure. Every fragment of evidence intensified the inevitable exposure. Evidence and witness accounts converged into a timeline both delicate and undeniable. Placement of objects, alignment of movement, and human behavior synchronized with environmental cues to reconstruct the night with precision. The cold case, once a dormant file, now pulsed with clarity. Investigators understood the weight of what they were uncovering. Decades of concealment, the careful orchestration of opportunity, and the undeniable presence of one individual within a meticulously reconstructed sequence of events. The city, indifferent yet omnipresent, had allowed a disappearance to occur. Now the same streets, shadows, and corners reveal what had been hidden. Footsteps traced patterns, vehicles marked movement, and memories corroborated evidence. New York, eternal and unyielding, held the past in its infrastructure, in its residents, and in its ambient hum. Observation, reconstruction, and forensic science combined to ensure that silence could no longer shield concealment. Investigation reached a stage of obsessive, comprehensive scrutiny. Every fragment, overlooked statement, and discarded lead was re-examined. Maps were redrawn, timelines reconstructed, witness accounts cross-referenced, and locations surveyed repeatedly. The past demanded attention. Momentum built with each verified detail, each corroborated memory, and each piece of physical evidence recovered. Detectives moved with patience and precision, allowing the narrative to emerge organically from accumulated fact and memory. Ultimately, tangible evidence, witness recollection, and environmental reconstruction converged. The night of 1988, once blank, now had contours. Shadows, movements, and subtle interactions formed a coherent sequence. The man under investigation could no longer hide behind ambiguity. Proximity, opportunity, and concealment were revealed in precise detail. The city, patient and eternal, had yielded its secrets. The cold case, long dormant, now pulsed with the inevitability of revelation. The investigation demanded consolidation. Every correlation was documented, every detail verified, every thread of the narrative carefully preserved. The cold case had evolved into a reconstruction of absence, observation, and concealment. Manhattan, which had once facilitated the disappearance, now bore witness to its revelation. Silence was shattered, and truth emerged, deliberate, precise, patient, and undeniable. The past spoke with clarity at last. The city seemed alive with memory, as if New York itself had been holding its breath for 30 years, waiting for someone to listen. Every street, every alley, every corner where light faded into shadow carried fragments of that night. Investigators retraced her steps, following invisible lines that mapped her last movements. The flickering streetlight above the corner where she had vanished seemed almost sentient, casting long, distorted shadows that mirrored the tension in the room. Time had blurred the physical environment, but the essence of that night, the opportunities, the danger, the presence, remained etched in the urban fabric. Witnesses were revisited. Their voices trembled, words careful, weighed by decades of recollection and regret. One neighbor described a fleeting figure, half-hidden, observing from a doorway before vanishing into the night. Another recalled a car door shutting where no car should have been, a sound overlooked in 1988 but now carrying significance. Each testimony, seemingly inconsequential on its own, when layered with others, began to form a precise map of movement, observation, and interaction. The city and its inhabitants had preserved these fragments, waiting for someone to assemble them into truth. The man at the center of the investigation exhibited signs of mounting tension. His calm demeanor masked subtle tells. Hands tapping, fingers fidgeting, a gaze that lingered too long or avoided too much. Investigators examined his past meticulously, reconstructing employment history, social connections, transit usage, and daily routines. Each intersection with her life revealed opportunities and moments of presence that had gone unnoticed for decades. The city had inadvertently documented proximity, opportunity, and intent, preserving the evidence for those patient enough to see it. Archived documents revealed previously overlooked inconsistencies. Employment records, payroll logs, bus passes, and dated receipts all contained discrepancies. Minor contradictions, insignificant in isolation, now hinted at deliberate concealment. Each anomaly was cataloged and mapped against other evidence. Over time, These small pieces coalesced into a pattern impossible to ignore. The man's narrative, carefully maintained for decades, began to crumble under methodical examination, each fragment of evidence a hammer striking at the foundations of his story. Witness accounts provided deeper insight. A former coworker remembered a fleeting remark about feeling observed, ignored at the time, but significant now. Another recalled seeing someone familiar in multiple locations near her routine. Alone, each memory was fragile. Together, they formed a consistent pattern of observation, presence, and possible threat. The investigators recognized that these recollections, when combined with environmental and forensic evidence, created a coherent narrative that could no longer be dismissed. The past, patient and persistent, was asserting itself. The storage unit, long forgotten, offered tangible proof. Boxes filled with personal items, clothing, and documents were opened, revealing careful concealment. Among these items was something unmistakably hers, preserved under layers of dust and plastic. Not dramatic in a sensational sense, but undeniable, evidence of presence and deliberate concealment. The significance was immediate. The past, long silent, was speaking. The city, which had facilitated her disappearance through indifference, now provided a voice through preserved objects and carefully reconstructed timelines. Forensic science advanced the case. Fibers, residues, and trace elements remained intact despite the decades. DNA analysis, once impossible, now confirmed connections. Every result was verified and integrated into the growing narrative. Investigators approached each piece of evidence with care, aware that decades of time could introduce errors if assumptions were made. Patience and precision were their instruments. The past was unyielding, but ultimately surrendering its secrets. The cold case, long dormant, now demanded resolution. Behavioral analysis of the man revealed subtle patterns of evasion. Minor contradictions, avoidance of key questions, and subtle microexpressions indicated concealed knowledge. Investigators observed him recounting events, noting hesitations, shifts in phrasing, and changes in eye contact. Each nuance, when cross-referenced with environmental and forensic evidence, revealed a trajectory of opportunity and concealment. Decades of assumed invisibility could not withstand patient, meticulous scrutiny. The city itself became a witness in ways previously unrecognized. Maintenance logs, electrical records, streetlight schedules, photographs, and utility reports corroborated witness accounts. Investigators reconstructed the environment of 1988, flickering lights casting distorted shadows, parked cars masking angles of vision, ambient noise masking subtle sounds. Every detail, once ignored, became crucial. Manhattan had preserved its memory, waiting for investigators capable of decoding it with patience and precision. Unexpected connections surfaced. An acquaintance, previously overlooked, provided context linking her routine to his presence. Shared locations, brief interactions, and minor conversations revealed patterns of proximity and potential intent. The deliberate gaps and silences that had protected the crime were dismantled, exposing the architecture of concealment that had shielded the truth for decades. The city, indifferent for 30 years, now revealed a pattern that was impossible to ignore. Media coverage intensified. Headlines proclaimed breakthroughs in a decades-old disappearance. Public curiosity surged. Inside the precinct, investigators remained focused on methodical, deliberate work. Evidence dictated pace. Spectacle could wait. Every correlation was meticulously verified. Every lead carefully documented. The cold case had evolved from a dormant file into a living investigation, driven by patient reconstruction, forensic analysis, and careful observation. Sensationalism had no place here. Truth was paramount. Family members provided further insight. Their memories, sharpened by decades, revealed patterns, routines, minor deviations, fleeting moments of discomfort, and subtle signs of unease. Investigators reconstructed not only movement, but perception, how she experienced her environment, the subtle cues she noticed, and the threats she may have sensed. Her final hours, once shrouded in uncertainty, began to emerge in layers, combining observation, memory, and evidence into a coherent narrative. The night of her disappearance crystallized through meticulous reconstruction. Flickering lights, shadows, distant sounds, and ambient movement formed a sequence of opportunity, observation, and concealment. Each detail, once ignored, became critical. The city, once a silent witness, now revealed itself in the alignment of evidence and testimony. Overlooked fragments, small memories, environmental traces, all contributed to the emerging narrative. Silence could no longer shield the truth. The man's behavioral patterns continued to unravel. Hesitations, avoidance, and inconsistencies painted a coherent picture of presence, opportunity, and potential culpability. Investigators cataloged each microexpression, each pause, each shift in demeanor. His carefully maintained facade, preserved over decades, began to crumble under relentless scrutiny. Every detail added pressure. Every piece of evidence tightened the net. Every reconstruction of the past diminished the space for concealment. Evidence and witness accounts converged into a clear timeline. Placement of objects, alignment of movements, and human behavior synchronized with environmental cues to reconstruct the night in precise detail. The cold case, once dormant, now pulsed with clarity and inevitability. Investigators recognized the gravity of their work. Decades of concealment, deliberate orchestration of opportunity, and the undeniable presence of an individual within the reconstructed sequence. The city, indifferent yet omnipresent, had allowed the disappearance to occur. Now its streets, shadows, and corners revealed what had been hidden. Footsteps traced patterns, vehicles marked movement, and memories corroborated physical evidence. New York, eternal and vigilant, had preserved the past in its infrastructure, in its residents, and in its rhythms. Observation, forensic science, and meticulous reconstruction ensured that silence could no longer protect concealment. Investigators moved with obsessive thoroughness. Every fragment, overlooked statement, and discarded lead was re-examined. Maps were redrawn, timelines reconstructed, witness accounts cross-referenced, and locations surveyed repeatedly. The past demanded attention. Momentum built with each verified detail, each corroborated memory, and each recovered object. The detectives, patient and precise, allowed the narrative to emerge naturally from evidence, memory, and observation. Ultimately, tangible evidence, witness testimony, and environmental reconstruction converged. The night of 1988, once blank, now had contours. Shadows, movements, and subtle interactions revealed a coherent and undeniable sequence. The man at the center could no longer hide behind ambiguity. Proximity, opportunity, and concealment became evident. Decades of assumed invisibility could not withstand patient and meticulous investigation. The city had yielded its secrets. The investigation demanded consolidation. Every correlation was documented, every detail verified, every narrative thread carefully preserved. The cold case had evolved into a reconstruction of absence, observation, and concealment. Manhattan, which had once facilitated the disappearance, now bore witness to its revelation. Silence was broken. Truth emerged, deliberate, precise, patient, and undeniable. The past, long dormant, finally spoke with clarity. The night had a texture now, a rhythm reconstructed from fragments of memory, evidence, and observation. Each street, each alley, each corner whispered what had happened decades ago. Investigators moved like phantoms through the city, tracing invisible lines that mapped her last movements. The flickering streetlights above the intersections pulsed with the memory of that night, illuminating shadows that were both literal and metaphorical. Every detail, once overlooked or dismissed, was now a critical piece of the narrative. time had not erased the past. It had preserved it, waiting for those patient and persistent enough to decode it. Witnesses were revisited, their recollections sharpened by decades of reflection and regret. A neighbor remembered the fleeting shape of a figure in the doorway, observing, retreating, leaving no trace but a lingering sense of presence. Another spoke of a car that had been parked unusually, its door closing with a subtle click that had seemed insignificant at the time. Each testimony, isolated, was fragile. Together, they formed a lattice of observation and movement, an invisible map pointing to opportunity, proximity, and concealment. The city itself became a silent narrator, speaking through those who remembered and the traces that remained. The man under scrutiny showed signs of mounting tension. His composure, previously near flawless, now revealed micro-expressions, slight tics, restless fingers, an unintentional glance at the floor. Investigators reconstructed his life in meticulous detail: employment history, transit routes, social connections, routine movements. Every intersection with her life became a node in a web of possibility. Proximity, long hidden by the passage of time and the city's indifference, now became starkly visible. Opportunity, once invisible, was mapped in the grid of Manhattan streets, corridors, and alleys. Archived documents provided crucial insight. Payroll records, employment logs, bus passes, receipts, all contained discrepancies. Minor contradictions, previously dismissed, now indicated deliberate concealment. Each anomaly was cataloged, cross-referenced, and measured against witness statements and environmental evidence. Over time, these fragments coalesced into a pattern that was impossible to ignore. The man's narrative, carefully maintained over decades, began to show cracks. Patience, methodical examination, and relentless reconstruction exposed every flaw, every omission, every hidden action. Witness accounts added layers of detail. A former co-worker recalled her expressing unease about being observed, a comment dismissed at the time, but now meaningful. Another remembered a figure recurring near her routine locations, someone familiar yet unnoticed. Alone, each account was delicate, uncertain. Together, they revealed a pattern of presence, observation, and potential threat. Investigators recognized that combining environmental reconstruction, forensic analysis, and these personal recollections created a coherent and undeniable narrative. The past, patient and unyielding, was asserting itself. The storage unit became a focal point of the investigation. Boxes long abandoned contained personal effects, clothing, and papers. Hidden beneath layers of dust and plastic was something unmistakably hers, small, preserved, and irrefutable. It was not sensational in a cinematic sense, but it confirmed what suspicion and circumstance had suggested: deliberate presence, concealment, and intent. The significance was immediate. Decades of silence and oversight could not undo what had been preserved. The past demanded acknowledgement. Forensic science advanced the investigation further. Fibers, residues, and trace elements survived the decades and were analyzed with modern techniques. DNA, previously inaccessible, now provided certainty. Each positive match reinforced the growing narrative. Investigators worked with precision, aware that even small errors could undermine months of reconstruction. Patience became their most powerful tool. The cold case, long dormant, now pulsed with urgency and inevitability. Behavioral analysis of the man revealed subtle patterns of evasion. Minor contradictions, avoidance of critical questions, micro-expressions, and inconsistencies indicated concealed knowledge. Investigators allowed him to narrate events in his own words, observing hesitations, shifts in phrasing, and eye movements. Each nuance, cataloged and cross-referenced with physical evidence, revealed a trajectory of opportunity, concealment, and proximity. Decades of assumed invisibility could not withstand meticulous scrutiny. The city itself served as corroboration. Maintenance logs, electrical reports, streetlight schedules, archival photographs, and utility records reinforced witness accounts. Investigators reconstructed the environment of 1988 in minute detail. Flickering lights casting distorted shadows, parked vehicles masking lines of sight, background noises masking subtle activity. Each small detail, once dismissed, became critical. Manhattan had preserved its memory, awaiting investigators capable of decoding it with patience, rigor, and precision. Unexpected connections surfaced. An acquaintance, previously overlooked, linked both her routine and the man under investigation. Shared locations, brief encounters, and minor interactions suggested proximity and opportunity. The gaps and silences that had protected the crime were dismantled. The architecture of concealment, maintained for decades, was revealed in its entirety. The city, patient and indifferent for 30 years, now testified with clarity and persistence. Media attention intensified. Headlines announced a breakthrough, sensational but secondary to the methodical reconstruction occurring behind precinct walls. Public curiosity surged, yet investigators remained focused on evidence, methodical verification, and meticulous documentation. Sensationalism could wait. Accuracy could not. The cold case, once dormant, had become a living investigation driven by patient observation, forensic science, and relentless analysis. Family members contributed additional insight. Their memories, sharpened by decades, revealed patterns, subtle deviations, fleeting signs of discomfort, moments of vigilance that hinted at threat. Investigators reconstructed not only her movements, but also her perception, how she experienced her environment, sensed danger, or interpreted subtle cues. Her final hours, long obscured, began to emerge in layers. Observation, memory, evidence, and environmental reconstruction converged into a coherent narrative. The night of her disappearance crystallized. Flickering lights, shadow patterns, distant sounds, and subtle movements formed a sequence of opportunity, observation, and concealment. Each detail, once ignored, became critical. The city, once complicit in its indifference, now revealed itself through alignment of evidence, witness accounts, and reconstructed context. Every fragment, every faint memory, contributed to a growing narrative. Silence had been the protector. It no longer had power. Behavioral patterns of the man continued to expose concealed knowledge. Hesitation, avoidance, and inconsistencies revealed presence, proximity, and potential culpability. Investigators documented microexpressions, pauses, and shifts in tone. Decades of carefully maintained concealment began to unravel. Every fragment of evidence intensified pressure. Every reconstructed movement reduced the space for deception, and every corroborated memory tightened the circle around truth. Evidence and witness testimony converged into a coherent timeline. Object placement, alignment of movements, and human behavior synchronized with environmental cues to reconstruct the night in precise detail. The cold case, once dormant, now pulsed with clarity, inevitability, and precision. Investigators understood the weight of the reconstruction. Decades of concealment, deliberate orchestration, and undeniable presence of an individual within the sequence of events. The city, indifferent yet eternal, had allowed the disappearance. Now, streets, shadows, and corners revealed what had been hidden. Footsteps traced patterns, vehicles marked movement, and memories corroborated evidence. New York, alive and unyielding, had preserved the past in infrastructure, residents, and subtle environmental rhythms. Observation, forensic science, and patient reconstruction ensured that silence could no longer protect concealment. Investigators moved with obsessive diligence. Every fragment, overlooked statement, and discarded lead was re-examined. Maps were redrawn, timelines reconstructed, witness accounts cross-referenced, and locations surveyed repeatedly. Momentum built with each verified detail, each corroborated memory, each recovered artifact. Detectives, patient, and precise, allowed the narrative to emerge naturally from evidence, memory, and reconstruction. Ultimately, tangible evidence, witness recollection, and environmental reconstruction converged. The night of 1988, once blank, now had contours. Shadows, movements, and subtle interactions revealed a coherent and undeniable sequence. The man at the center could no longer hide behind ambiguity. Proximity, opportunity, and concealment became clear. Decades of assumed invisibility could not withstand patient, meticulous investigation. The city had yielded its secrets. The investigation demanded consolidation. Every correlation was documented, every detail verified, every thread preserved. The cold case evolved into a reconstruction of absence, observation, and concealment. Manhattan, which had once facilitated the disappearance, now bore witness. Silence shattered. Truth emerged, deliberate, precise, patient, and unavoidable. The past, dormant for decades, finally spoke with clarity and resolution. The city at night felt different now, as if it too had been waiting for decades for someone to pay attention. Every street corner, every alley, every flickering streetlight seemed to breathe with memory. Investigators walked slowly, deliberately, retracing the lines of her last known movements. The hum of distant traffic, the faint rumble of subway trains, the whisper of wind through empty streets. It all formed a soundtrack to the reconstruction of a night that had been lost to time. Each detail, once invisible, now carried weight. Time had preserved the truth. It simply needed the patience and precision to uncover it. Witnesses were interviewed again, and this time their memories resonated with urgency. One neighbor recalled a figure lingering near a doorway, half hidden in shadow, watching before retreating into darkness. Another remembered a car that was never supposed to be there, a door closing with a subtle click that had been dismissed in 1988 but now demanded attention. Each statement, isolated, was fragile. Together, they formed a lattice of observation and movement that pointed toward opportunity and concealment. The city had preserved these fragments, quietly waiting for the right moment to reveal them. The man under scrutiny grew increasingly tense under the weight of attention. His outward calm concealed micro-expressions, restless fingers, a fleeting glance at the floor, a jaw tightening ever so slightly. Investigators reconstructed his movements in meticulous detail, tracing employment records, transit patterns, social interactions, and daily routines. Each point of intersection with her life became a critical node. Proximity, once invisible in the haze of indifference, now revealed itself starkly. Opportunity, preserved in the patterns of the city and the routines of daily life, could no longer be denied. Archive records revealed inconsistencies that had gone unnoticed for decades. Payroll logs, bus passes, receipts, and employment records each contained contradictions. Seemingly minor details, once trivial, now suggested deliberate obfuscation. Each anomaly was carefully documented, cross-referenced, and weighed against witness accounts and environmental evidence. Gradually, the fragments coalesced into a pattern that could no longer be ignored. The man's story, carefully maintained for decades, began to show cracks. Meticulous investigation exposed omissions, contradictions, and subtle signs of concealment. Witness testimonies added nuance and depth. A former co-worker remembered her remarking on feeling watched, a comment dismissed at the time, but now significant. Another witness recalled seeing someone familiar at multiple locations along her routine, a figure that had gone unnoticed. Alone, these recollections were delicate. Together, they revealed a consistent pattern of observation and potential threat. Investigators recognized that when environmental reconstruction, forensic science, and witness testimony were combined, the narrative became undeniable. The past, silent for decades, was asserting itself. The storage unit became central to the investigation. Boxes of personal belongings, documents, and clothing revealed deliberate concealment. Buried under layers of dust and plastic was an object unmistakably hers. Small, preserved, and incontrovertible. Not sensational in the traditional sense, but undeniable. Evidence of presence, contact, and concealment. Decades of silence could not erase it. The past demanded acknowledgement, and the city, which had once shielded the truth, now forced it into the light. Forensic science pushed the case forward with precision. Fibers, residues, and trace evidence survived the decades and were analyzed using modern techniques. DNA analysis, once impossible, confirmed a direct connection. Every result was verified, documented, and incorporated into the narrative. Investigators approached each piece of evidence with caution, understanding that errors could undermine years of painstaking reconstruction. Patience and precision became their weapons. The cold case, long dormant, now pulsed with the certainty of inevitability. Behavioral analysis of the man under investigation revealed subtle patterns of evasion. Hesitations, contradictions, and micro-expressions suggested concealed knowledge. Investigators allowed him to recount events in his own words, observing shifts in tone, pauses, and avoidance of certain details. Every nuance, cross-referenced with forensic and environmental evidence, revealed a trajectory of presence, opportunity, and concealment. Decades of assumed invisibility could not withstand methodical scrutiny. The city itself served as corroboration. Streetlight schedules, maintenance logs, electrical records, archival photographs, and utility reports aligned with witness testimony. Investigators reconstructed the environment of 1988, flickering lights casting distorted shadows, parked vehicles masking lines of sight, background noise obscuring subtle activity. Every detail, once insignificant, now carried weight. Manhattan had preserved its memory, awaiting investigators capable of decoding it with patience, diligence, and precision. Unexpected connections emerged. An acquaintance, previously dismissed, linked her routine with his presence. Shared locations, fleeting interactions, and minor encounters revealed patterns of proximity and opportunity. The deliberate silences and gaps that had protected the crime for decades were dismantled. The architecture of concealment, painstakingly maintained, was revealed. The city, patient and indifferent for 30 years, now testified with clarity and persistence. Media attention intensified. Headlines proclaimed breakthroughs, and public curiosity surged. Yet inside the precinct, investigators remained focused on careful, methodical work. Evidence dictated pace, spectacle could wait. Every correlation was meticulously verified, every lead rigorously documented. The cold case, once dormant, had transformed into a living investigation, driven by forensic science, observation, and the patient reconstruction of events. Sensation had no place here. Truth was paramount. Family members contributed essential context. Memories sharpened by decades revealed routines, subtle deviations, fleeting moments of discomfort, and signs of unease. Investigators reconstructed not only her movements, but her perception, how she experienced the city, interpreted threats, and navigated subtle cues. Her final hours, once obscured, began to emerge in layers. Memory, evidence, observation, and environmental reconstruction converged to create a coherent narrative. The night of her disappearance crystallized in detail. Shadows shifted under flickering lights, distant sounds punctuated silence, and subtle movements formed a timeline of opportunity, observation, and concealment. Each detail, once overlooked, became critical. The city, which had been complicit through indifference, now revealed itself through evidence, testimony, and reconstruction. Every fragment, every memory contributed to the narrative. Silence had been the protector. It was powerless now. Behavioral patterns of the man continued to unravel. Hesitations, avoidance, and inconsistencies painted a coherent picture of presence, opportunity, and potential culpability. Investigators cataloged micro-expressions, pauses, and tonal shifts. His decades-long facade began to fracture under relentless scrutiny. Every piece of evidence intensified the pressure. Every reconstructed movement diminished the space for deception. Evidence and witness accounts converged into an undeniable timeline. Object placement, alignment of movements, and human behavior synchronized with environmental cues to reconstruct the night with precision. The cold case, once dormant, now pulsed with clarity, inevitability, and purpose. Investigators recognized the weight of their task. Decades of concealment, deliberate orchestration, and undeniable presence of an individual within the reconstructed sequence. The city, indifferent yet eternal, had allowed the disappearance. Now, streets, shadows, and corners revealed what had been hidden. Footsteps traced patterns, vehicles recorded movements, and memories corroborated evidence. New York, alive and unyielding, had preserved the past in its infrastructure, residents, and rhythms. Observation, forensic science, and meticulous reconstruction ensured that silence could no longer protect concealment. Investigators moved with obsessive diligence. Every overlooked statement, discarded lead, and fragment of evidence was re-examined. Maps were redrawn, timelines reconstructed, witness accounts cross-referenced, and locations repeatedly surveyed. Momentum built with each verified detail, each corroborated memory, each recovered object. Detectives, patient and precise, allowed the narrative to emerge naturally from evidence, memory, and reconstruction. Ultimately, tangible evidence, witness recollection, and environmental reconstruction converged. The night of 1988, once blank, now had contours. Shadows, movements, and subtle interactions revealed a coherent, undeniable sequence. The man at the center could no longer hide behind ambiguity. Proximity, opportunity, and concealment became clear. Decades of assumed invisibility could not withstand patient, meticulous investigation. The city had yielded its secrets. The investigation demanded consolidation. Every correlation was documented, every detail verified, every narrative thread carefully preserved. The cold case had evolved into a reconstruction of absence, observation, and concealment. Manhattan, which had once facilitated the disappearance, now bore witness to revelation. Silence shattered. Truth emerged, deliberate, precise, patient, unavoidable. The past, dormant for decades, finally spoke with clarity.